Isaac.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. And you?
Doing really well.
Okay. You seem to be the only one available today. Well, as I mentioned in the email, most of the time students are not available at the time I choose. But when there is at least one, it is okay because I record it so that everyone can come back to watch it. But it is always good to be there because you can have questions to ask me. So as you know, this is a 7 or about 8 weeks classes, so it will be going a little bit faster and it is online. So we are not going to, I mean, it's not a face-to-face class. So there is no time to waste. So that's the main important point I want everybody to be aware of. I am going today to go over the syllabus and emphasize over some of the practical way the class is going to be going. And also I will go over chapter 1. If you feel like it is too long and you want to leave, I want you to feel free to go. I don't want you to feel like you have to stay because we might take about an hour. Okay. So I want to start with the syllabus. So I am Dr. Norbert Yumbi from the mathematics department. I will be teaching this course for this winter session. And the syllabus contains information about the Franciscans' values, the St. Francis University goals, based on those values. I'm not going to go over all of those. You can go on the syllabus on Canvas and read it through. So we are going to be meeting, I mean, the class is online, and if a student have an issue and want to contact me, the best method is the email. When you send me an email, I usually respond within 24 hours. I put 48 hours just to be on the safer guard, but most of the time I don't stay for more than 6 hours before I respond to an email. This is because the course is online, and if I don't respond fast, you might not, I mean, if I respond, you might have to ask me another question. So we are going to have almost all the material is available on Canvas. We are going to go over uh, the Canvas to see how materials are organized. So we are using a textbook called Understandable Statistics, Concepts and Method. I say 11 or 12. The 12th edition is what is available at the bookstore. But if you buy a used one of 11th, it will still be okay. So an important tool in this course is a TI-84 calculator. If you can manage with a TI-83, but TI-84 will have a little more tool than TI-83. Those with calculator will have the feeling that the course is much easier than those without a calculator, because there are so many computations, and it may not be easy for someone to be doing it all by hand. And the purpose of this course is not to teach you how to do computations, is to teach you how to do statistics, how to use statistics essentially. So in this course, you are going to learn about descriptive statistics, that is the method of collecting, organizing, and summarizing data. That is, you will know what is a data summary, which is generally like the average, and so on. We will learn basic probability principles and do an example of discrete probability distribution, which is the binomial distribution, and also some continuous distributions such as the normal, the t, the chi-square, and the f distributions. We are going to learn all of those as we go on in the class. The second part of statistics, which is inferential statistics, consists of estimation, hypothesis testing, and regression, and analysis of variance. Those are the type of topic we are going to be covering. So at the end of this class, you should be able to know what statistical term meant. mean and how they are being used in real life situations. You will be able to understand more of the scientific argument that are either on newspaper, on TV, and even at your workplace. You will be able to know what some of those scientific expressions mean. Then before we continue, I want to show a page on Canvas. We will go to Canvas so that you all see the configuration of. So this is what you will see, not exactly this. I'm going to go to the student view. So this is what you will see when you go to Canvas. So on this right side of the Canvas, you see assignments that are due soon. The first one is the discussion, which is just an introduction of yourself. We are going to go back to discussion and what each of those assignments actually mean. So here you will go to module. Module takes you to the description of the coursework. If you want to know more about your instructor, you go to about the instructor, how this class works, a summary of what I will explain as we go over the syllabus. The syllabus is also available here as on the home page. The goals, the assessment, we are going to go over what assessment we will be having in this class. So I can discuss it here. One of the easiest way to make points in this class is through the discussion. Discussion encourages interactions among students and the instructor. So a topic will be given. You don't need to really be correct, but you need to bring argument in your discussion. Most of the time you are told, you are asked to say something about a topic that we have learned in class. And you will have to respond to at least 2 posts. So most of this discussion, what I expect is to feel that you are participating into the discussion by writing your initial post and then responding to other student posts. What usually makes you lose point in responding is when the students say, George, I agree with what you say. I think you are right. I will ask you, what did he say? And why do you think he is right? And then that will reduce point from you. So when you want to have full point in discussion, first, make your own point clearly, support it with clear example. Generally will take you about 200 to 300 words. And then respond to each individual. If somebody say, yes, education is good, you will say, yes, I agree with you. If I say education is good because you learned about things you did not know, it's good when you are responding to me to say yes. For example, when I get into a statistics class, I learn about hypothesis testing that I did not know before. Make me feel that you actually agree with that person with your own understanding, not just say, the example you gave was good, then you will lose points. So that is about discussion. You will also have homework at the end of each chapter. Actually, the homework is divided by sections, as we are going to go over chapter 1 today. You could go over the homework of chapter 1. For each section, there are a certain number of questions that I ask you to do. And I don't grade homework for correctness. Homework is for you to assess what you have learned in class. It is your responsibility to realize that you have not understood the homework, so you want to ask a question to the teacher. So when you try to do your homework, I only grade it for attempting to do it. And evidence for attempting to do the homework is at least a statement which is not just about an answer. If I ask you what is 2 plus 2, don't just write 4. You should say 2 plus 2 equals to 4. If I say, what is your age? You should answer, for example, my age is 21. My age is 18. Don't just write 18. What is the color of your shirt? Don't just write blue. Write something like, my shirt is blue. Something that if somebody is reading your answer, the person can know what you are talking about. If somebody that does not know the question you answer cannot make meaning from your answer, then I mark it wrong. If I say, what is 2 plus 2? And you say, 2 plus 2 is 5. Actually, you write it mathematically. 2 plus 2 equals to 5. You get the point, because homework is just to check that you have tried to assess if you have learned in class or not. There are 10 of those. There are 10 chapters, and each homework is 2 points. So that will give 20 points for homework. And discussions, there are 5 of them. Each of them is 4 points, and that will make 20 points. We are going to see all of that on syllabus. So after doing your homework and realizing that you have mastered the course, that you have understood to the best of your knowledge what is on the chapter, you will now have to do the quiz on that chapter. What you will be assessed on the quiz are simple questions related to the content of the chapter. You will have 3 attempts. I am not only speaking to Isaac, I'm speaking to all those who might be listening to me later. So you make the first attempt, and after that first attempt, you might not have the full marks, which is 4 points. You might have missed 2 or 3 questions. Go back to those questions and check if you knew the answer and only made a mistake, or if you did not understand that aspect of the class. Then you send me an email if you like. If you are not yet able to know why you got it wrong, just send me an email and I can explain to you by a response to your email why your answer was wrong, because you will not see the right answer. You will just know that you are wrong on your first attempt. I will send and answer to you I will explain it by email. If you are not satisfied, you can ask me if we could meet. Sometimes I ask you, sometimes I am like on my computer and I see your question coming in. I know you might be available. I ask you, can you be available in 10 minutes? I can go into Zoom and then we have a discussion and I explain that to you. So after your first attempt and you are sure that you have understood the questions you missed, you go to the second attempt. You will encounter different questions. So you try the second attempt and you might get it all right. And that is good, you get your 4 points. If you don't get it right, get back to me before the third attempt. My experience with students at the beginning is that they do all those attempts in 1 hour. After the first attempt, he just tried the second attempt and he missed the same question. I see students carrying the same mistake they made on their first attempt right to the exam. Because similar questions comes to the exam. The quiz is my way to push you into learning. If you do your quiz and you get it wrong and you try and get the right answer, you will feel like, oh, I got it wrong because I did not understand this aspect of it. If you still don't know why you got it wrong and I explain to you, then the next attempt you are going to get it right. And I always encourage students to do all the 3 attempts because I choose the best of the 3 attempts. Meaning that if you get 4 points on the first attempt, you get 2 on the second, and you get 1 on the third, you will still get 4 over 4. But the more you make attempts, the more you learn about the class. So that's why I'm spending so much time on quizzes. So there will be exams. There will be 3 exams. The first one, which is on chapter 1, 2, and 3. The second one on 4, 5, and 6, and the final exam on 7, 8, 9, and 10. So exam questions are similar to the quiz questions, and you will have 2 attempts as well. Just as for the quizzes, after your first attempt, it's always advisable to contact me or to learn hard enough to be sure that you have known why you got it wrong the first place. Then there will be 2 projects, and to do project, you will have to put yourself into a group of at least 2 students. There are about 11 students in the class, so I expect about 5 groups or 4. You could be 3, 2 or 3. So just contact the class. I need somebody to work with. Anybody want to work with me? Or if you have friends already, you can get yourself together to do the project. You do the project together and you follow the instructions on the project. I'm going to come back to the project. Each time I give project, I will have a Zoom session to explain how to go about the project. Each project is 10 points and the 2 projects make 20 points. Each exam, the first exam is 30 points, the second is 30, and the last one is 40 points. So this is about assessment for this course. And if you have questions, you can always stop me or you can send me an email if it is later. Along the line in class, we are going to need some statistics table, generally from 6. Actually from chapter 5, we will need the binomial distribution. But if you have your calculator, you might not need the table. So I put the table here just for those still who might not have the calculator or who might prefer to learn it from the table. So as you were able to join me on this class, that is how we will be having meeting from time to time. I could send an information. I will be on Zoom at this time. And if you are free, sometimes a student might just request a Zoom meeting and I advise everybody that there will be a Zoom meeting. We always meet using the Zoom link, which is on Canvas. And as I told you, when you ask me a question, if you are meeting me immediately, I will not announce it to the class. If you are meeting me 2 or 3 hours later, I will send an email to everybody that I will be available if somebody has a question. So, how do you submit your homework? Here I put homework for problem chapter 1 because some of you don't have the homework available. You need to click on this download chapter 1 problem to get to it. So the homework problem for chapter 1 are available here for those who don't have their textbook yet. Not doing your homework is not going to be an excuse because you don't have a textbook, because I put all the homework problems in this on this link. So you click on chapter 1 here to see the homework problems for chapter 1. And then you could click here on start assignment when you are ready to submit. You can type your assignment on Word. You can also type it directly on Canvas. That is a little more complicated sometimes. And or you can write it down on a paper if you have a scan, a good scan, a clear scan. You scan it and then upload it on Canvas. And I will grade it. So once you are ready, you can upload it here, upload file. You click here and you select the file that where you save it. Okay, so this is about the homework. Now let's go to the quiz. Okay, chapter 1, after homework, when you are ready, you have answered the questions of homework easily, you go to the quiz. Here you can decide to take, there are 3 attempts. You will take the first attempt by clicking on the quiz, and then you will see questions. This is an example of question. 38% of students in this school are on a type of scholarship. Is an example of, you have to decide whether it's sampling statistic, inferential statistic, descriptive statistic, or parametric statistics. So that is how you have 10 questions. On the quiz, you get 1 question at a time. After your first attempt, you can see, after the first attempt, you can see your answers. You can identify answers you got wrong. You can take the number and or take a screenshot of it if you got it wrong and you want me to know, to explain to you why you got it wrong. It's always good to take a screenshot of your quiz answer. So now when you want to watch the PowerPoint, here you click on audio PowerPoint here. Audio PowerPoint is always good to download it to be able to view it and to listen to me in my explanation. Today, we are going to go over it. I am going to explain as if there was no audio, because sometimes that is more practical than the audio which is there. So it's taking some time to download. There are also video for each chapter, YouTube video. I have YouTube video for all the other chapters, which you can also use, and it is much better than the PowerPoint because you can even listen to me on YouTube with the audio video. So after this, I'm going to put it on YouTube so that those who prefer YouTube will be able to watch. So this is the chapter 1 of the PowerPoint, the audio PowerPoint. So if you want to see it as a slide, you click on slideshow and then click on begin slide. And you will be able to go over it. The advantage of the PowerPoint is that you can always refer to a slide. Sometimes when a student asks me a question, I will say, go to slide 10 and you will find an example for that question that will help you understand the question that you have. Meanwhile, on the YouTube video, I don't follow the PowerPoint. I mean, I follow the PowerPoint, but I cannot easily tell you where to go and get an answer, a question. So that is why you will have PowerPoint and you will also have a YouTube video, which you can watch over and over to understand better about the course. So this is a guide to how to use Canvas to do this class. I'll go back to the syllabus. So on the syllabus here, I've described what I just told you. The discussion is 20 points, the project is 20 points, homework 20 points, quizzes are 40 points, the 2 midterm exams are 30 points each, that's why we have 60 here, and the final exam is 40 points. So here is a tentative assessment schedule. Sometimes we modify it, but generally you can use this to determine when a quiz or homework is due, but you can also see it on Canvas. At the end of this, you have homework problem listed here, which you have them on Canvas as well. Sometimes there could be a little discrepancy between the numbers that are on Canvas and the numbers that are here. The numbers that are on Canvas are the one you have to do. Any questions so far?
Wait, is the final exam, is that cumulative or is that just chapter 7, 8, 9, and 10?
So that is it about the syllabus. If you have any question, feel free to send me an email. So I want us now to start with chapter 1. So it might take us about 30 minutes to go over chapter 1. It is the introductory chapter and naturally is like the easiest chapter. So we are going to discuss what is statistic. Statistic consists of collecting, organizing, summarizing, presenting data on graphs. So we collect what we call information from individuals. The individuals, when put together, are called a population. So we collect the data, which is the information. We organize it using a frequency distribution table that we will learn in chapter 2. And we summarize it using measure of dispersion and measure of central tendency, like the average, the median, the mode, the standard deviation, the variance. Those are expression of data summary. Then we present this data using graphs. We are going to learn about graph in chapter 2. And we analyze the information that we have collected in order to make predictions or to draw conclusions. That is what statistics is about: collecting, organizing, summarizing data in order to analyze it, in order to make predictions or draw conclusions. So the main object in a statistical study is an individual. This individual could be human or otherwise. We can be studying school in a state. We can be studying trees in a region or in a state or in a country. We can be studying insects or whatsoever. Each of the object from which we get our information is called an individual. And the set of all individuals is what we call a population. Now, any portion of that population will be called a sample. An example that I will give is, for example, if we want to study apples produced in Pennsylvania. We want to study apple produced in Pennsylvania. All the apples that are grown in Pennsylvania will be our population. One thing about population is that nobody knows it. I mean, in general. Even the population size of the United States is not known, because at any second, somebody is born, somebody is dying, and we may not know how many are born, how many are dying, but yet we can only have an estimation. For example, tomorrow's temperature, we don't know, but we can find an estimate of it. So there are two types of statistics: descriptive statistics, which consist of collecting, organizing, summarizing, and presenting data using graph. That is what will be in the contents of chapter 1, 2, and 3. An inferential statistic that makes inference about the population. For example, we will infer what the temperature is going to be tomorrow. That is inferential statistics. The main difference between descriptive and inferential statistics is that descriptive is about what you have, what you know, what you have collected. Inferential is the type of generalization or a prediction. We may say that most people like eating avocado, for example. That's the generalization. It's an inference, probably because you have a sample and from which you saw more than 50% say they like eating avocado. So that conclusion is an inference, is inferential statistics. On your quiz, we saw a question of a situation in which you were asked whether it's descriptive or inferential statistics. So from a population, we generally measure a value. Any numerical value obtained from a population will be called a parameter. If it is from a sample, we call it a statistic. For example, the population size is a parameter. The average age, like of St. Francis University student, will be a parameter. So parameters are unique and generally unknown. Statistics are known because they come from data collected. So statistics are generally used to make inferences about parameters. I will give another example. If somebody gives you a foreign coin, you might not be sure if that coin is a fair coin or not, and you want to determine what is the probability of head when you toss that coin. So in order to achieve that, you can toss that coin 20 times and count the number of heads. If you get 11 out of 20, then 11 over 20 will be a statistic because it is based on an experiment you just did, a trial you just made. The actual proportion of head when you toss that coin may not be known. For most of our coin in America, We know they are fair coin and the proportion is half. That half is a parameter. So essentially in statistics, we aim at estimating parameters that are not known. And we use two different methods in doing that, estimation and hypothesis testing. If you have questions, you can always stop me at any point. As I said before, we may be interested in studying apple produced in Pennsylvania, and all the apple grown in Pennsylvania will constitute our population. We may decide to randomly select 1,000 apples, and that will be what we will call a sample. So information that we collect from a sample is what we, from each apple is what we call data. They are called also variable. For example, it could be the size of the apple, it could be the color, it could be the location where the apple came from, it could be the taste of the apple. Is it sweet or not, for example? Is it good or not? So we are going to look at different types of characterization of the data that we get from individuals. We will classify data into two types, quantitative and qualitative. We will say that data are quantitative when their values are numbers. When we say numbers, we mean values that could be added or subtracted. We mean you can divide it, you can multiply. So those are what we call numbers. They are quantitative. When data are not quantitative, we call them qualitative. For example, color or names. They are qualities, not quantities. I always remind students that sometimes quantities are used for qualities. For example, identity number. An identity number is not a quantity, it's a quality, because if you add two identity numbers, it doesn't give you another identity number. So it might not give you, it doesn't make sense actually. So zip code, these are numbers, but they don't really reflect quantities. They are just qualities. So we want to be careful when sometimes numbers are used to know that even though they are numbers, they don't reflect a quantity, they reflect a quality. So we are going to classify variables or data into four categories called level of measurement. So the first, which is also the lowest level of measurement of a variable or data, is the nominal level. At the nominal level, data can only be named. That is, they cannot be ordered, they are just names. Just like our names, Paul, Peter, John. You can say John is a bigger name than Paul. So a data that is only named is at the nominal level. It cannot be ranked, it cannot be ordered. For example, zip code. You cannot order zip code. You cannot say a zip code is bigger than another zip code. It is at the nominal level. So if that data values can be ordered, but are not quantities, that is, you cannot add or subtract them, we call the variable at that level ordinal. That is, you can order them even though they are not numbers. For example, shirt size, you have small, medium, large. As we say about taste of apple, you can say it is not sweet, or it is sweet, or it is very sweet. So that means you can order it, but you cannot add sweet to not sweet to get something. You cannot add poor to good to get something, but you can order it. After ordinal level, we get to interval level. These are numbers that could be added and subtracted. At interval level, numbers can be added, subtracted, but does not have a meaningful zero. A meaningful zero here means zero does not mean nothing. Before explaining the concept of meaningful zero, I want to explain the one of interval. Why do we call them interval? We call them interval because they are only a representation of a value. For example, if we say it is, what time is it now? You will say it is 5:35. It is 5:35 by my laptop now. But that 5:35 is not a fixed value because as I am speaking, it's now 5:36. Let's say it is 5:36. As I am speaking, the time is passing, but I am still at 5:36. So meaning that when I say 5:36 is a range or an interval of 1 minute that is represented by 5:36. So or when you take temperature and you say it is 70 degrees, it could be a little bit less, a little bit more. 70 is just a representation of values that are within a range of values. That is why we call them interval. So at the interval level, we say zero does not mean nothing. It is just an indication. One example of interval level is temperature. When we say that the temperature is 0 degree, it does not mean the absence of heat. It is just an indication. Actually, when you are at 0 degrees Celsius, it is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. An individual who is in an environment that uses Celsius might have thought that 0 degrees Celsius means no heat. Meanwhile, in Pennsylvania, sometimes in January, people will say it is warmer when it gets to 32 degrees. So we say meaningful zero, meaning that zero means nothing. So for temperature, zero does not mean nothing. We are going to look at time again. When we say this class started at 5 p.m., while this 5 p.m. referred to noon as the zero, because after noon we got to 1, 2, 3. But that zero did not mean there was no time before noon. Noon actually for some people is 12 p.m. That is, there have been 12 hours. So even if you get to midnight, there is no beginning of time. Zero does not mean nothing. So when you are speaking about the time, like at what time are you having your meeting, or at what time is your flight, what is your departure time, what is the arrival time, all of those notion of time are interval level because it does not have a real starting point. There is an indicative starting point, which we call the beginning. For example, noon as 0. So we say that a variable is at the interval level when it is only that interval that matters about it. There is no meaningful zero. Next to interval, and which is the highest level of measurement, is the ratio level. At the ratio level, we still deal with numbers that are intervals, but that has meaningful zero. For example, how long have we been in class? We can say 39 minutes. We have been in class 39 minutes. At 5 p.m., it was 0. We have not started. It was 0. Or income, when you say, how much money do you have? You can say nothing, and it means you have no income. So 0 means nothing. So issue as time in terms of duration. How long have you been? What is the duration of your flight? This is ratio because 0 means nothing. But what is your departure time is interval. What time did we start the class is interval. But how long have we been in class is ratio. Length, time, in terms of duration, weight, those are ratio level. IQ, for example, is interval because there is nobody with 0 IQ. So I'm giving you here an example, which is based on a situation that I gave in this example. A researcher designed the following questionnaire to distribute at a bus stop. The following questions are contained in the questionnaire: name, zip code, departure time, that is time you left your home, trip duration, how long it took you to get to the bus stop, and bus company performance, very good, good, acceptable, poor. We want to classify this data as quantitative or qualitative and to determine the level of measurement of each of the information. Name, for example, is qualitative and it is nominal. Zip code is qualitative and it is nominal because it cannot be ordered. Departure time is quantitative and it is interval because the departure time does not is expressed with an artificial zero, not a meaningful zero. Trip duration is quantitative and it is a ratio. Bus performance is qualitative, it is ordinal. You will observe here that qualitative variable takes the first two levels, nominal and ordinal. Quantitative level are interval or ratio. So for your homework and your quiz, you will be given variables and you will be asked to classify them in terms of whether they are quantitative or qualitative. Sometimes you will be asked to determine if it is, what is the level of measurement. Section 2 here, we will discuss random sample. As we mentioned before, it is not always possible to have a parameter. And we have to use a statistic which is obtained from the sample to make inference about the parameter. In order for your inference to be reliable, to be good, it needs to come from a sample that is representative of a population. For example, if for an election, you go to a church and sample maybe 50 people and ask them questions about ethics, moral issue like abortion, you might not be getting a right attitude of the whole population if you have to ask everybody, what do you think about abortion? So that sample is not representative of the population, is a kind of biased sample. So a sample that is representative of a population is what we call a random sample. And in general, we have different techniques of getting a random sample. They are called sampling techniques. And we are going to look at them. There are commonly used 4 sampling techniques. As we go over these techniques, remember that your questions at homework or quiz will be about to determine if the method used was any of the 4 that we are giving. We have simple random sampling. In a simple random sampling, individuals are randomly selected, simply randomly selected. This procedure is generally done using a random number system. A random number generator will generate a random number. I'm going to go to Excel, which has a random number generator. And to give you an example of how you can see my recording message on Canvas under Zoom. Thank you. So I'm going to Excel and I will share it. Okay, so a random generator from Excel will give us a random number, let's say between 1 and 100. I will type equal to, And random, this is random between 1 and 100. I will choose a number randomly. So if I had numbered my population as from 1 to 100, the 51 individual will be the one selected. So if I want to select 20 individuals out of 1,000, for example, I will click equals to random between 1 and 1,000. I am assuming here that my population has 1,000 individuals and I want to select 20 of them. I will do this and then I will click on the number 133 and I will bring my cursor on this cell until I see a plus. Then I'm going to replicate the random system here. And these are the 20 individuals that will be considered for my sample. This is a simple random procedure. Simple random techniques using a random number generator. The next method is systematic sampling. In systematic sampling, individuals from the population are numbered and the k'd individual is selected. For example, you can use k to be 5 and you stand at a busy street and count the cars passing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you give your questionnaire to the 5th individual. You will know that this is a systematic sampling when a number is used to rank the individual that will be selected to be part of the sample. Next to it is stratified sampling. In this technique, the population is subdivided in social groups that are called strata. The social group could be, for example, income level, high income, medium, and low income. At a college, for example, you could have faculty, students, administration, non-teaching staff, and that is stratification. Those groups are called strata. So you subdivide your population into strata, and within each strata, you randomly select a portion of your sample. Cluster sampling is another technique in which researchers subdivide the population into sections called clusters. Generally, this is a geographic characteristics, such as school district. I can still decide, for example, that I want to use a new method of teaching, and I don't know how that method is good. Then I decide to use that method in some classes that I will be teaching. I randomly select 1 or 2 classes and teach that semester using that method. I am using a cluster sampling. So an important characteristic in cluster sampling is that clusters are randomly selected and every member of the cluster is used. We may want to apply a special type of diet to see if it will help reduce obesity at schools. And we randomly select a school district that will use that diet for the students. That is cluster sampling. Naturally, a researcher could combine more than one of those methods in considering its random sample. Researchers could also conveniently use the data that are available at a data bank, such as government office, the registrar office of a school, or even from the newspaper. That is convenient sampling. So when we collect a sample, the information that we have will help us to get a statistic, which may not be the same as the parameter representing the population. For example, if I toss a coin 20 times, and I get head 11, 11 over 20 is a statistic from the sample that I got by tossing a coin 20 times. The difference between the result you get from the sample and the one you get from the population, or the actual result of the population, is called sampling error. A sampling error occurs first after you got a random sample, and the difference between information from your random sample and the actual value from the population is what we call a sampling error. If our error is a result of wrong sampling, it will not be considered a sampling error. There is nothing like a best sampling techniques. It depends on what research you are conducting. One point three, Introduction to Experimental Design. As we have learned, we collect data from a population using random sampling technique. This sampling technique provides us with a random sample, and we may design our research using the following steps. First, you want to know what information are you out for? Who are the people you want to get the information from? What are the variables, and how are you going to get those variables? You will have to design a questionnaire, for example. You want to determine if you will use the entire population or just a representation, that is a sample. When a study uses the entire population, we are going to learn soon, it will be called a census. When it is just a sample, it is called a sampling. In your data collection, plan to address all issues related to ethics, subject confidentiality, and privacy. If you are collecting data at a store or a business, a college, or other institution, be sure to be cautious and to obtain permission when necessary. In some cases, you might have to contact the Institutional Research Board to determine if it is normal, if it is acceptable for you to use humans in the type of research you are conducting. Then you will collect the data, and then you will use the appropriate descriptive statistic method to organize and summarize your data, and then appropriate inferential statistic method to get your results. Finally, note any concern you might have about your data collection method and list any recommendation for future studies. So as I just mentioned, a census is when you consider the entire population. A sample or sampling is when you consider a sample, a part of the population. A simulation is another method of obtaining data. This is a research method consisting in using a computer software to replicate a real-life situation. That is called a simulation. There are generally two types of research studies: observational study and experimental study. In an observational study, the researcher merely observes and do not affect the individuals that are producing the information that he's collecting. In an experimental study, a treatment is deliberately imposed on the individuals in order to observe a possible change in the response or variable being measured. For example, if I want to know the effect of coffee on students, I can give a group of students coffee, and another group I don't give them coffee. So the group that receives coffee is the treatment group, and the group that does not receive is called the control group. So this is an experiment. In research, we also come across issues as the placebo effect. After getting a result, for example, if you want to test a drug to know if that drug is effective in curing a disease, the result might be due to a placebo effect. The placebo effect occurs when a subject receives no treatment but incorrectly believes he or she is in fact receiving treatment and responds favorably and is cured. So for example, somebody might tell you that this medication can cure their disease. You believe him, take the medication, and you are cured. So when we are doing in research, in medical research, sometimes we need to consider the placebo effect. Some potential pitfalls of a survey. Survey is one of the general methods of collecting data. So these are some of the issues you may encounter when you want to collect data, as you will be doing soon at the end of chapter 3. People might not respond or might not respond correctly to your questionnaire. Sometimes they may not remember. You might ask somebody, have you ever had this disease? And the person is not sure whether he or she had the disease or not. That is faulty recall. Hidden bias. The question may be worded in such a way as to elicit a specific response. Don't you think it will be good if we have a tennis court on campus? When you ask a question like that, it might motivate the person to say yes. And then that kind of response is not unbiased. It is a biased response. The order of questions might lead to a biased responses. You might guide the person with several questions that will end up like end up making that person say something you want. So we call this one hidden bias. There are also vague wording such as often, seldom, occasionally. You can ask somebody, do you drink? Occasionally. Occasionally for somebody might be drinking a bottle of beer every day. And for him, once a day means occasionally. Meanwhile, for another person, occasionally will mean once in a week or in a month. So these are vague wording that you should not include in your questionnaire. Interviewer influence. Factors such as tone of voice, body language, dress, gender, authority, and ethnicity of the interviewer might influence responses. Voluntary responses, individuals with strong feelings about a subject are more likely than others to respond. Such a study is interesting, but not reflective of the population. So when we collect variables, we may have to deal with some issues such as lurking variable. Is a variable for which no data was collected, but that nevertheless has influence on other variables in the study. We also have confounded variables, which are variables that cannot be distinguished from each other. Confounding variables may be part of a study, or they may be outside or lurking variables. So this is the end of chapter 1. I advise you to go over this PowerPoint, go over your textbook. There are more examples in your textbook. Try to do the homework and see if you have understood what we have been talking about. If you have questions, do not hesitate to contact me. As I said before, after your first attempt, make sure that you know why you got answers wrong before you move to the second attempt. If necessary, try to contact me. Okay, good luck for the course. I want you to remind you once more that success on this course depends so much of your communication. Communicate with each other. Communicate with your instructor. Don't just feel like I will understand. If you are hesitating, just send me an email. Send email through the class. Okay, have a good evening.